Welcome back, my loveliest FreeMelons, to this next lecture in our secret classroom, where we discuss and we dismantle all the lies and all the disinformation and all the deceptions of culture, and where we teach only the highest truths, the highest goodness, and the highest moralities under God and natural law, which happen to be the same thing. I am Eli Martyr, and a while back I received a question on one of my videos about morality, and I thought it was very, very important. It's something that I wanted to get around to sooner or later. The question was, how can we be sure, how do we know that there is an objective code of ethics in nature, worked into the fabric of the universe, right? A code of ethics and morality, right? How do we know that that exists? How do we know that it's morality, right and wrong, is not just some subjective human-made thing? And if there is such a law code that is fundamental to the workings of the universe, then who is in a position to enforce this law code? Does it stand to reason that if I can steal candy from a baby and get away with it, that there can't be any such thing as natural law, right? So how does that work? As is my aim with all my lectures, I'm going to approach this seemingly complex subject and employ natural, basic logic and thought in an easy to understand way so that you can take this teaching, maybe watch it once and never forget it, and thus be able to share it with your children, especially. Oh my God, especially your children, or anyone else that needs to hear it. So the very first thing that we need to understand, right off the bat, the belief in the non-reality of objective principles of natural law, natural morality, virtue, harmony, etc. This is called moral relativism. If you believe in moral relativism, then you believe that right and wrong and morality are simply just these subjective concepts that human beings, make up on the fly. It's just, there's no actual law code in nature. Whatever works for you, that's what's right. Whatever doesn't work for you, that's what's wrong. A social construction, not real, okay? Fake. It might surprise you to know that moral relativism, this concept of non-belief in objective natural truth, is a prime tenet in the satanic philosophy. If you are a moral relativist, believe it or not, you're more than halfway there to being an actual overt Satanist, okay? Again, in opposition to the comfort of general lines of thought, the concealed, shadowy agents and bodies that rule the mechanics of our lives from behind the scenes of government and business at the higher levels operate under a core unified religion. Now, that religion is the same religion that has been practiced by these people for a millennia, okay? Whether we want to call it Satanism or the Dark Brotherhood or whatever. The core principles of their belief have remained unchanged and continue to exert their influence on us today. It's through media, movies, TV, music. The architects of society slowly bleed into all the things that we perceive elements of their philosophy that they want you to adopt so as to facilitate the eventual complete control and takeover of the human mind and spirit. I'll read you the satanic tenet that I'm referring to in Anton Szandor LaVey's The Satanic Bible. Satan represents man as just another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who, because of his divine spiritual and intellectual development, has become the most vicious animal of all. So these psychopaths that sit behind the seats of government, that run the world, that are responsible for everything that we see and we hear on TV and movies and media and all that kind of stuff, they want you to consider yourselves no different or no higher than the common animal. And because animals do not have the sophistication of conscious thought, they don't have the individualized ego, because they don't have that, they are not held to the same responsibilities under natural law as you and I would be, right? So these Satanists want you to believe that animals and humans are exactly the same, right? And if that's the case, if you're just an animal, yeah, then whatever. Well, if you think you're a pig, right, that's good for you. That humans are not mere animals and that we are held to a higher degree of responsibility than the lowest of animals, okay? Some of the other things, Satan represents all the so-called sins as they all lead to physical, mental, and emotional gratification. On and on it goes. I mean, I definitely recommend reading it so that you can know your enemy. But Anyhow. Now, of course, not all TV and media is bad all the time. There are lots of great gems that you can pick out. And man, when it comes to natural law, Uncle Ben said it the best.
But just because you can beat him up doesn't give you the right to. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Whoever came up with that line obviously knew something about esoteric philosophy and, the true workings of natural law and morality. So, the world wants you to believe in moral relativism, because if you believe in moral relativism, it means that you will accept all the manifestations of evil around you, right? Evil could be right in your face, but if you're a moral relativist and you don't believe in your own belief system that what that evil is in fact evil, you'll just let it go by, right? You just won't do anything. And can you imagine how dangerous that is? If a population of people were just taught to regard, let's just say, murder as perfectly moral, then people could go around murdering and no one would do anything about it, because in their belief system, then that's fine, right? Now, the irony here is that the elites, those at the highest rungs of hierarchy, right? They don't believe in moral relativism at all. They just want you to believe that, because they understand that there are actual consequences to immoral behavior. They get other people to do the dirty work for them. Police and military, right? For example. They want you to believe in moral relativism because you are the cattle. But amongst themselves, they do not believe this. They understand that there are consequences to immoral behavior. It's the rulers that keep the knowledge to themselves, and the lies and deceptions, they go to the cattle, you and me. Okay, so with that out of the way, now we can start this lecture. Okay, so understand that if you think right and wrong are just illusions, you are playing into the hands of the hierarchy, and you are doing and thinking exactly what they want you to do and think for the planned agenda of complete human enslavement in body, mind, and soul. Understand that. Very important. Now, I spent a lot of time trying to plan for this lecture because, there's so many ways that I could approach this. And I finally settled on a structure to teach this lesson to you. And I hope it works. I hope the way I've chosen to present this is easy to understand and easy to apprehend, because my goodness, this is up there with one of the most important lectures on this channel right now. So please pay attention, try not to listen to this in the background while you're playing tennis or whatever. Give this some good thought. As I've mentioned in other lectures prior to this one on this channel, there are certain natural laws and natural principles that, if kept in mind, will help to better frame understandings. If I get my friend here, the Encyclopedia of Ancient and Forbidden Knowledge, this old tattered book by an occultist named Zolar, we read, "As it is below, so it is above. This law should ever be remembered. It is man's universal but infallible guide, and anything conflicting with it can be rejected as completely erroneous." He's referring to the Law of Correspondence. The Law of Correspondence meaning nature uses one particular formula, and it uses that formula in manifestations of all higher, middle, lower planes, and all the planes in the middle and above and below, right? So you understand how the atom works, you understand how the universe works. If you understand how the universe works, you understand how the human body works. If you understand how the human body works, you understand how the human mind works, blah, blah. So, correspondence, right? So, nature's generalized plan and blueprint for things is expressive in the same way on all levels, okay? So, as we go through this lecture, I want you to keep that in mind, okay? Keep as above, so below in mind as we go through this. All beings, blessed with higher consciousness, have the ability to recognize truth. And truth in nature is always simple. It's the reason why when someone tells you something that is true, there's a feeling associated with it. There's a resonance. Whereas someone who tells you just something that is a lie or too complex or a bit deceptive, there's a feeling that's just not as genuine when you hear something like that, right? So the more evolved a being is in conscious thought, the more they are able to recognize truth when they encounter it or when they hear it. So with that being said, I'm going to make a statement here that you've probably known your whole life, but you may not have had anyone word it in this particular way. And sometimes things that we do instinctually know, when you hear it verbally expressed in a certain way, it can help to bring it back to the forefront of conscious thought. So the closer that one's thoughts, words, and actions are aligned with the highest expressions of nature's immutable laws, the closer the products of these behaviors result in harmony, peace, goodness, and love. Subsequently, behaviors that stand in opposition to natural laws result in disharmony, disunity, discord, and all other undesirable characteristics that do not typify cosmic intelligence. So let's go way back in time, okay? How did we come to these basic understandings of nature? From what source can we draw upon to know absolutely that these laws do exist? Well, in the beginning, before culture and before cities and all that stuff, man had to rely on his natural faculties in order to come to the truth about anything in particular. Using observation and natural thought, he could bring himself to an understanding of the workings of a certain thing. It was nature that was man's first instructor. It was the observable world around us that revealed the plain truth that beautiful intelligence was guiding the workings of form and function. Now, if you don't believe that there is some sort of intelligence working in the universe to bring us all of the natural phenomenon that we take for granted every day, you're not paying attention. If you can describe to me how a tiny seed turns into a massive oak tree, well, you can't. If you can tell me how childbirth works, how and why, you are God, right? From where do the electromagnetic forces that keep planets in their alignment and keep the Earth in its particular orbit around the sun, where it's not too far away and not too close, perfect balance amongst all of the other planets in the solar system to prevent chaos, right? All of them in perfect mathematical, geometrical harmony, right? If you imagine all of this is just random, this is just all just like a fluke, you're an idiot. What do you want me to say? Oh shit! Oh shit! I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's just, I wasn't expecting to call my audience idiots. This make me laugh. I know you're not idiots, but I'm just, anyway. It was the observable world around us that revealed the plain truth that beautiful intelligence was guiding the workings of form and function.
But generally speaking, primitive man lived in a natural world. He began to build his way of living by studying the life of the world around him. He had to come to the conclusion that if he was ever going to understand the invisible, he must be able to find it in the visible. Almost all old theologies are merely abstractions of natural phenomena. The gods were the powerful chieftains. All of the rules and laws attributed to deities were the result of human relationships testing the possibility of community existence. So little by little we built a world in which nature provided the only available facts. These facts could be by careful meditation, perhaps, or constant reinvestigation, could become truths. Namely, that there were truths that could be built upon facts, that these facts could become the basis of rules, that these facts, by constant repetition and investigation, showed nature's way in a great many directions. It made it possible to decide internally, to a measure at least, what nature expected us to do. On the basis of nature would penalize anything that was not within its own approval. Nature would penalize anything that was not within its own approval. So little by little, the science of nature began to take the form of a natural philosophy. A natural philosophy that was based upon the seasons, upon the climates, upon the various nature phenomena, from everything from the gently flowing stream to the volcanic eruption. Now, from facts, the problem of truths resulted in morality. Morality was really the moral interpretation of facts. It was a fact made alive and vivid through experience. The individual taking the fact and working with it discovered finally that it had within itself a meaning, a moral value, that it produced good consequences, that it advanced causes, whereas error nearly always destroyed. So little by little the truth factor came in. And after a long time with truth, the mind and consciousness began to ascend to a higher level, and this was reality.
So through the ages, this study of nature continued on until, from the observable natural phenomena, the wisest were able to glean certain principles. And as these principles were discovered, they were written down, shared, added to, and eventually had classes of wise men and women devote entire schools of learning to the teachings of these natural principles and phenomena that, if lived under, would lead the person into the best type of life possible. Okay, so as we said earlier, remember, as above, so below. Now, as difficult as it may be to understand at first, I'm going to present you with something here. One of the truths in nature is that duality, or the concept of separation, is only an illusion that we live under in the physical world. The higher truth is that all is one, right? Only one type of energy, one type of substance. And it is that one infinite source of energy and power that expresses itself differently in different elemental compounds and makeups. Let's take air, for example. I'm in a bedroom, and the air quality is natural and normal and healthy. And in the adjacent room, the air quality is not good, okay? Maybe there's a bad smell, maybe there's a rotting something in the room, right? And the air smells a bit funkier in the other room. The air in my room and the air in the stinky room is the exact same air. You wouldn't say that there are two different types of airs in the bedroom and in the other room. It's the same air. It's the exact same air diffused everywhere. But the difference between the two rooms is that the air in the bedroom and the air in the other stinky room have taken on different properties, right? Same air, slightly different properties associated with that one energy, that one force. Now, when I tell you to keep as above, so below in mind, this is what I'm talking about, all right? So you can use the examples of nature to give you insights as to who you are and what it's all about. Okay? There is only one life force. That's it. There is one force of life and vitality that is infinite and inexhaustible. This infinite source of life, what makes the difference in all the types of matter and all that kind of thing, right? What makes the difference between all of these things is the degree to which that single life force has the ability to express itself in that thing, determined by the makeup of the elemental compounds. Thus, life force is more greatly able to express itself in a human being, for example, than in a rock. A rock, for example, has life force in it, but the elemental composition of a rock does not allow the full extent of life force to express all of its qualities in a rock as much as it can with a human being. In a human being, life force has a tool, has a vehicle with which it can express more of its qualities. So that is what the difference is between things in the universe, right? One life force, and that life force expresses itself differently depending on the makeup of that thing. Now, luckily for us, quantum physics has already proven that there is no such thing as separation in reality. With scientific experiments that have been reproduced over and over and over, we can prove that duality and separation is not the truth in reality.
The first experiment, number 1, was performed in Geneva, Switzerland, University of Geneva, July 25th, 1997. It was reported to over 3,400 journalists, educators, scientists, engineers in more than 40 countries. Very, very famous experiment. What did they do? They took a particle of light, a photon, one photon, And they wanted two identical photons. So they took one particle and cut it into two. Now you have photon 1, photon 2. They put them into a special machine that could take the photons and separate them by 14 miles. And once they were separate, they could begin the experiments. So here are the two photons. We're going to shoot them 14 miles apart. Here they go. Okay, now this particle is 14 miles from this particle. And what they found is this. Whatever they do to one particle here, the other particle acts like it is still connected even though it's 14 miles apart. The particle acts like it's still connected even though it's 14 miles apart. And the question that they're asking is why? If you take two particles and you separate them, why do they act like they are still connected? The phenomenon is called entanglement. All I'm asking that you remember from this experiment is simply this. Once particles are physically separated, even though they are no longer together physically, the energy is still connected. Does that make sense? Are you okay with that? This is why this is a very important experiment. If we could go back in time to the beginning of our entire universe, there was a time when everything was connected. Scientists are now telling us the universe was once physically connected and is now separate, but energy is still connected. And that is the reason why you and me and everything is still connected. Does that make sense to you? Does that help to make sense? It makes sense to me. As a scientist, I need to understand this. So the question is, are we still connected? The answer is, you bet we are.
Okay, so let's recap before we continue. What we know right now in this lecture is that we are all one, right? We are all the same energy. We all come from the same source. There is no actual separation between things, okay? We also know that as above, so below, okay? So we know these two things, right? You're okay? I hope you're with me. So, knowing what we do now, what does this mean about morality? How do we apply this understanding to the concept of morality and right and wrong? Well, let's think about this for a second. I want you to assume right now that you are God, all right? You are the divine being. And everything in creation, everything in the universe, consider it like it's your body, okay? If you're a God, the entire universe is the body of God. Picture that. Now, imagining that you are God with a body that is everything in the created universe. If I were to take a pair of shears and shear off the skin on my finger, would that be a productive thing to do? Okay, obviously not, right? Why? Because the finger is part of my body. So in shearing off part of my finger, I am hurting my own body, right? That I'm teaching this is funny, but you'll see what I mean. Let's say as a god, I want myself a nice tooth necklace, all right? A necklace made of teeth. And I extract my own teeth from my own mouth, steal my own teeth, and then put them around my own neck for myself, all right? Is that a productive thing to do? Would that be a smart thing to do? No. Why? Because I'm taking my own teeth and I'm stealing from myself to give myself something else, right? So, but I'm destroying myself in order to, so it just doesn't work. So if you are everything, then it makes no sense to cause damage to another part of you in order to benefit, right? Does that make sense? You see how that works? So if you are a god, right, you couldn't possibly have any desires because you have everything, first of all. And since you are everything, treating another aspect of your body with disdain or contempt or with malice doesn't make sense because it is you. So you would just be hurting yourself. Well, as it turns out, that is the truth of reality, right? The truth is, if we understand that there is actually no such thing as separation, that it is only an illusory thing to let us experience in the physical world, but at the highest plane, there is no such thing as separation. And we know that as above, so below, then it means that when you do harm to your neighbor, you are actually, in reality, doing harm to yourself. Just as in our example where God chops off his own finger because he likes chopping things, but in essence, he's chopping off his own finger and he's causing himself harm. As above, so below. I kill my neighbor's dog, I am killing part of myself. I steal from my other neighbor, I am stealing from myself. Right? It makes no sense because we are all the same oneness. This is why the golden rule exists, and it is the most repeated rule in different wording in all of the religious denominations throughout man's history. When Jesus or Krishna or Adonis or Mithra, Kukulkan, Anu, Gilgamesh, or whatever, whenever they say, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, they are teaching you a fundamental law in nature, and there is no more important rule that you could adopt to your life. It is called the golden rule for a reason, because that rule applied to your life immediately puts you in line with the perfect spiritual, moral, and true path that you are meant to be trotting. So why is it that all the spiritual philosophies in the world preach a doctrine of love and compassion? Well, what does love and compassion have to do with this objective moral existence? Because what better way is there to describe an attitude of consideration and care and benevolence for everything in existence besides love? That is the best way to describe it, and that is, in fact, why the universe is guided under the principle of love. Okay, it is love and care that makes up the foundation of everything in existence. When I am that God in that body, and I don't cut off my finger, that I'm treating my body with care is an act of love. It is love. It is love and consideration that is the actual objective force in the universe, in creation, not a subjective man-made thing. It is the reality. So morality and love are these are the same thing. It's the same concept, right? Different wording. Okay, so hopefully you're following along with me, right? We know that all is one. We know as above, so below. And we now know that if all is one, then to do harm to something else is stupid and counterproductive because you are actually, in fact, doing harm to yourself. So now that we know those things, let's continue. I want you to consider a tree. The tree covers vast portions of the Earth's dry land surface. Trees are rooted into the earth deeply, and thus they are connected to the creative intelligence of the earth. Without trees, life cannot exist. Now, our ancient ancestors understood that there clearly, very clearly, must be a divine force of love and benevolence behind the creation of the world. So in order to study this force, they searched in nature for what would be obvious as the highest expressions of this force of love and benevolence. And since trees are so abundant and clearly essential to survival, the tree was studied as an agent of this divine force of love. So these ancient masters, when searching the outside world for examples of how the universe operates, the tree was picked out as that symbol, a symbol of the divine force working in the universe, right? And what did they notice? They noticed that a tree never fights. They noticed that a tree never steals. It never robs. A tree never, ever causes harm to anything or anyone. It doesn't cause harm to itself, doesn't cause harm to anyone around it. A tree gives and provides freely of itself to everyone and anything without discrimination. It doesn't matter who picks its fruit. It constantly gives and gives and gives and gives perpetually. Not only does it give perpetually, but despite abuse, and let's say an animal coming and just scratching the bark off of it, or a human, or a kid, or just guys with chainsaws chopping down trees everywhere. Despite all sorts of abuse, the tree continues to give and give and give and give selflessly in the world, right? Regardless of anything that is thrown at it. In fact, the only ambition that the tree has in its entire life is one of constant service to the world. Constant, unerring, unwavering service. At all times. No exceptions. If there's evil in the world, well, the tree is going to continue to do good till the day it dies. That is what a tree is doing. And it is because of this service that trees give us that we continue to be able to do anything on this planet. trees amongst other agents of natural law, whose sole responsibility is constant care and benevolence. It is to them that we owe our survival and our constant existence. And it is only because of those agents who are held to a high degree of responsibility in natural law, who constantly give. That is the reason that we can be deluded into thinking that we can cause harm and it's okay. Why is this important? Because these ancients realized if that is how the divine is working, through these high agents of morality and truth in nature, like the tree, they noticed that if we applied the philosophy of the tree to our own society, right, then what we would be doing is we would be acting in harmony with these natural laws. And thus, you would be creating perfect harmony, perfect balance, perfect mathematical cohesion in the human society that is based on the laws of nature. So you structure your society on how a tree operates: love, selfless service, right? You irrevocably, inevitably lead that society into freedom, truth, harmony, perfection, elevation, evolution. No other way it could possibly work. As we'll talk about later, cause and effect, right? That is the effect. If the effect is mathematical, geometric, natural, beauty, and truth, well, you have to implement those causes, and those causes are love and benevolence, etc. What's another symbol that the ancients studied as examples of how to lead their life? Let's take the sun. Oh my God, yes, of course, the sun. The sun is the sole symbol of worship in the entire ancient world. All religious denominations all come from the worship of the sun, obviously. Right? Look at, there's a bloody massive burning orb, perfectly shaped, mind you, orb in the sky, burning bright and yellow every single day for you. It warms you. It makes your food. It causes you to grow. It keeps you healthy. You can bathe in the waters because the sun. Obviously, this is a very, very, very high-ranking agent in the order of nature, right? So these ancients, they just used their common observation and observed, what is the sun doing? It is constantly giving, selfless service and routine every single day without fail, right? If you design your society in accord with the philosophy of the sun and the philosophy of the trees and whatnot, then you are being moral. Do no harm, but take no crap. One of the more famous occult masters in our history, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, a Kundalini yogi named C.W. Leadbeater. He was privy to certain initiation rites in some of the occult theosophical schools where only the best, brightest, and most morally aligned people of very, very high spiritual distinction were allowed into these groups. And whenever they would have new inductees come to join the society, they would have very strict initiation rituals. And so I'm going to read you some of C.W. Leadbeater's work. Now, in this description that I'm going to read to you, what he's doing is he's recounting what the master, I believe his name was Master Kuthumi, just, a spiritual master. And he's recounting what Master Kuthumi said to the initiates on initiation day. So here, I'll give this a read for you. Never for a moment forget your occult relationship. It should be an ever-present inspiration to you, not only a shield from the fatuous thoughts which float around us, but a constant stimulus to spiritual activity. The vacuity and pettiness of ordinary life should be impossible for us, though not beyond our comprehension and compassion. The ineffable bliss of adeptship meaning mastery of physical life, mastery of the self. The ineffable bliss of adeptship is not yet yours, but remember that you are already one with those who live that higher life, right? You are already one with those who live the higher life. So what do you notice about that little clip there? He just said in different words, as above, so below, right? You are dispensers of their sunlight in this lower world. So you, too, at your level, must be radiant suns of love and joy. The world may be unappreciative, uncomprehending, but your duty is to shine. What did he just describe there? He just described that in order to lead a perfect life and to bring balance to the world, you have to conduct your life as if you were a son of selfless service to humanity, right? That brings peace and truth and harmony and love to the world. Nothing else. Many who read these instructions may be surprised by their extreme simplicity. They may even despise them as being little suited to guide and help people in the immense complexity of our modern civilization. But he who thinks thus forgets that it is the essence of the life of the pupil that he shall lay aside all this complexity, that he shall, as the master put it, come out of your world into ours, come into a world of thought in which life is simple and one-pointed, in which right and wrong, now listen to this very carefully, in which right and wrong are once more clearly defined, in which the issues before us are straight and intelligible. It is this simple life that the disciple should be living. It is the very simplicity of which he attains which makes the higher progress possible for him. Very, very powerful words to live by. Reading from Hilton Hotema in The Glorious Resurrection. Okay, now listen to this. Does universal law have exceptions? Exceptions belong to the realm of speculation. Mathematicians do not record exceptions. Mechanical laws know no exceptions. In a word, universal laws are invariable, omnipresent, and illustrative of the character of the creative process. The presence of sapient writings, the evidence of lost arts, the crumbling remains of edifices surpassing all present achievements, these are all the things which attest incontrovertibly to the existence of intellectual giants in primitive times. We know now that what the ancient scrolls contained were the outlines of ancient tradition and legend, formulated by the accumulated wisdom of ancient sages, covering the observations and experiences of mankind for hundreds and thousands of years. Out of that accumulated wisdom, there came forth those set formulations of cosmic data, of cosmic laws and moral codes that have survived the test of time and still stand as scientific commitments of the highest order. Man, guys, there are books like this. I mean, this is the kind of information that you need to expose yourself to. If you're reading, How to Become Michelle Obama, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to wrap this up finally by talking about right and wrong, now that we know everything that we've talked about in this lecture. And I'm just gonna read what I have written here. Right and wrong is not a progressive, ever-changing construct created by human beings. Right and wrong are objective truths prescribed by nature to all beings of sufficient enough intelligence with which to recognize them. Actions that are right are those actions that do no harm to or restrict the infinite freedoms of another or oneself. Actions that are wrong are those that do harm or restrict the infinite freedoms of another or oneself. Now, who is the arbiter, the judge of this law code? Who is the one that dishes out the consequences of bad behavior and the consequences of good behavior? The judge, the person who actually enforces these laws, is the principle of cause and effect. It is that simple.
На технику безопасности случится, можно по нему даже, я не знаю, там, взять, и...
Cause and effect is the grand judge. Equally dishes out equal treatment, equal punishment, equal reward for all of your behaviors in the exact prescribed denominations. Cause and effect, obviously. Right? When it comes to morality, cause and effect is really the only law that really matters. Now, governmental law, the law of authority, these largely have absolutely nothing to do with actual morality, with actual laws of good and evil. To believe that some random group of immoral men and women have rights that you do not have, right? To believe that requires training from birth in a corrupt world ruled by these immoral people. A judge does not have godly rights over you. A policeman does not have godly rights over you. An inbred family of murderers who are so incompetent that they need people to literally wipe their asses for them, literally, do not have rights that you do not have. All beings under natural law have the exact same rights. All beings. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying to you. So if all beings have the exact same natural rights, and right and wrong are objective truths in morality, does that mean you can criticize a culture? Yes, absolutely. It means that you can criticize a culture. If that culture performs and behaves immorally, you can criticize them. Does that mean you can criticize a religion? Yes, of course it means you can criticize a religion. A religion is not necessarily truth. A religion is just a belief system. And if that belief system is immoral or conducts immoral acts on the people that they govern, right, you can analyze and you can criticize that religion for the truths of its operations. If a clerical injunct states that a priest cannot get married, right, he cannot of his own free will choose a wife, that is immoral. You are restricting the freedoms of that person, right? That is an immoral act. You have no authority under natural law to restrict the freedoms of someone else. Excuse me, this power does not exist in anyone, right? If your religion dictates that you are not allowed to cut your hair, let's just say, that is not correct. That is not moral. You cannot enforce your own beliefs on someone else. That is immorality. That is not love. And as for governmental laws, I mean, there's just so many fines and fees. And does having a stupid little card make me a better driver? Or does the experience of driving make me a driver? It doesn't matter if I don't have a ridiculous little ID card or whatever. That has nothing to do with natural law. Natural law is freedom. Natural law is do unto others as you'd have done unto yourself. Natural law is do no harm, but take no crap. Punishing people for driving without a license is wrong. It is an immoral act under natural law because you are imposing your will. You are stealing from someone for something that they have done that has not caused harm to anyone else. It's absurd. You have a right to do anything you want under natural law so long as it doesn't cause harm or impinge on the freedoms of another. Any action that causes no harm is under natural law a right, is morally acceptable. Now, I might need another lecture, a follow-up lecture to this, to start talking about the right to defense and all that. Now, of course, people are going to try and think of all sorts of exceptions to this rule. Like, well, what about polluting? Well, that's not harming anyone. Well, look, if love is the guide, if love and care and consideration is the guide, if that is the energy that dominates things like the sun, the trees, the world, love is the truth. There really isn't any question that is unanswerable, right? You can just think of these things for yourself and come to the correct decision, all right? It's really not that hard. Really not that hard. However, there's a distinction to be made between prudence and, of course, morality, right? You can be doing something that is well within your rights to do, but it might not be a smart thing to do. It might not be prudent. For now, I really hope you guys understood this, and I really hope this was presented in a way that makes sense. And the takeaway, again, that I want you to accept from this is we are all the same divine unit of vitality, of conscious life, having different expressions in different vehicles. To act badly towards other things outside of you, these do not bring harmony. Can you imagine if the sun decided that it was just gonna warm itself and not everyone else for a couple of days, one day? Can you imagine the chaos? Imagine if the trees decided to quit their job of constant benevolence for just one day. Imagine the impact, right? Now imagine a world where every single human being acted like trees and suns. Constant benevolence and constant care. guided by the energy of love and benevolence. Imagine what that would be like. And that's why the wisdom of the ancients that is handed down to us tries to teach you what you are, how to practice love and compassion in yourself, in your life, applied to other people, applied to yourself, your own body. You don't drink and smoke and pollute your body, right? Because that's not an act of love. You don't prescribe that for other people. You don't give other people drugs and things because that's not an act of love. You don't hurt other people. You don't steal because that's not an act of love, right? All of those are examples of immorality, of evil, of wrong, right? Thank you for sitting with me on this one. I really hope this was informative for you, and we will see you next time in the secret classroom here on the FreeMelon Society.